I saw it outside, standing beneath the street lamp, so tall it nearly touched the bulb. It looked dark and slender, with no visible features from the distance I was viewing it from, and seemed nearly paper thin. The snowfall gently illuminated the figure beneath the flickering light, enchanting me until I blinked. It got closer. It pressed its face against the window, and, well, was it really a face? It had no eyes, just a void where they should be that seemed to reach out into the furthest parts of space itself. I saw tendrilled creatures floating through the cosmos that I didn't have the words to properly describe, places where the absence of light was light itself, and stars, so many stars. It seemed to realize my entrancement this time and grinned so widely at me I thought its mouth would stretch endlessly, its jagged teeth growing in numbers. I blinked again and the figure was gone. Curiously, I had found my way up to my bedroom and I laid my head down on the pillow, with no recollection of doing so. The only thing on my mind being what that thing had left behind, a simple word scribbled on the fog glass. Sleep, 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 sleep. And so I lay there, eyes heavy. The snowfall was reflecting moonlight into my room, and I can almost make out a figure bent over in the corner, too tall to stand, and a void swirling in the endless expanse that should be its eyes. Sleep. I think I'll sleep. It was late at night. My wife and daughter were deeply asleep. I was still awake, browsing on my computer. You see, this town that I live in is nicknamed the Murder Town because of the high amounts of murders that have happened here. It's not that frequent, but the rate is still considerably higher than the average town. Despite that, people still live here and call this place home, like me and my family. As I was mindlessly browsing on my computer, I heard faint screams coming from the house next door. The possibility of murder happening right next to my house came across my mind. You see, it had been about a month since the last murder in this town. It was all over the local news, and my family had followed the entire story about it, from the moment the murder was reported until the execution of the killer, which was shortly after. The death penalty was always the resolution for the killers in my town. As the screams got louder, I thought about the best thing to do in this situation. Since it was very late at night, I figured that the other people around here were already asleep, so it was up to me to investigate. I didn't bother to disturb my wife and daughter, so I immediately grabbed my phone and walked out of my house. I approached the house, which was the source of the screams. As I peeked from outside, there it was, murder. A middle-aged woman killing her family members with a knife. Without hesitation, I pulled out my phone and called the police to inform them about this. Something weird that I noticed was that the woman with the knife was Miss Hansen, the main witness of the last murder. I didn't know what to make out of it, so I shrugged it off. Before I was able to run away, I saw that the killer had noticed me. I was distracted by her glowing white eyes. Before I knew it, her eyes began to glow in a brighter and brighter white, eventually blinding my vision. Then I lost consciousness. As I opened my eyes, I found myself inside the house of the murder, holding a knife standing next to the dead bodies. I wasn't in my own body anymore. My gaze focused on the man outside of the house, holding a phone. The man looks oddly similar to me. That's when I realized that's my original body. The man smiled at me with glowing white eyes, chuckled, and said, "The police are on their way. They're not gonna believe you." At that moment, I realized why each murder in this town was the main witness of the last murder. He felt guilty for what he'd done, but it was over now. He pushed a lock of hair away from her glassy eyes, but didn't bother to shut them. Her face had faded to a pale cream, and her body was beginning to cool. The pool of blood and the grass around her open ribcage had concealed into a sludge. He carefully slid his boot backwards to avoid the puddle and wiped his hands on his jeans. No matter what his hunger drove him to do, he always felt remorseful with a full stomach. This one was no different. He caught her in a trailhead parking lot. People often overestimated how fast they can complete the trails, and he would wait, patiently, for a straggler caught in the rapid winter sunset. He felt her fear building as he approached. She gently put her pack in the back seat and jumped behind the wheel. But he can move faster than the average man, and he grabbed the door before she can shut it. She stared directly into his face, eyes wide. For a second, neither of them moved. He could hear her heartbeat thumping wildly in her chest, calling to him. And then, she scooted across the seat and jumped out. Surprised, he watched her run across the pavement. The passenger door flung open behind her. His eyes dilated. His pulse accelerated. His predatory instinct kicked in. She didn't make it far. He caught her on the other side of the lot and snapped her neck before dragging her into the tree line. He liked to enjoy his meals in privacy. Now that he was done, his mind was more clear. He stood and left her moonlit corpse for the coyotes. There was one other heartbeat calling to him in the darkness. He tracked the thin, rapid pulse back to the car, where her baby sat strapped into the backseat carrier.